And we are live. Ep.010 Q&A Unplugged Part 2. So today we have some questions going on. We got some questions from some people, and then me and Coach Henry are kind of just going to be throwing some questions back and forth at each other, and maybe you guys get some good information from that today. But just kind of overall, as an athlete, one of the questions I actually think is a great one for some parents out there who they themselves are currently on the traditional mindset of the weightlifting, right? One of the questions I had was, having done that for years, the bodybuilder type workout in a two-dimensional space, how can I start implementing three-dimensional movements into creating an athletic base?
He just went straight for the home run.
And it was straight for a big one. No,
yeah, it wasn't like, oh, at what age should my kids start playing sports? It's like, let's start talking about physics and space-time continuum, right? So your question your question is not your question, a parent. That sounds like your question.
So this was actually my girlfriend's question.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I was like, what parent is talking about 3D space, right?
So I kind of added that part to kind of make a little bit of sense.
Okay, I see what's going on here.
She had asked the question because she played soccer in high school. So she was very athletic at a younger age. And for the past 6 years that she's been out of high school, she's been doing bodybuilding. So she got into the gym space. She just pretty much got into all that type of lifting and then working out. And now she wants to go back and play soccer again for the university she's going to. She wants to try out. And so for her, it's like, if I've been training like this for so long, how can I unbreak the rust and how can I get back and doing movements again?
That's a very broad question.
Yeah.
That can be dissected. We'll go vague. So you always start from basic, work your way to complicated, easy to hard, slow to fast. You kind of get the gist, right?
Yeah.
If so, she wants to go back to sports. What's the best way to start? So generally speaking, if you've had a big break from sports, so she's an adult, so this would be for like an adult athlete, you have to rebuild your GPP, your general physical preparation. So rebuilding your attributes from the ground up. So having baseline mobility, baseline, speed, conditioning, mindset. So you can't rush things. So one of the biggest mistakes I've seen, mainly with adult athletes, meaning 18 plus, is they'll take a break and then they try to pick up where they left off.
Yeah.
And that's something that can lead to injury. You don't pick up where you left off. Your body didn't self-maintain over time. So you have to rebuild your attributes. I've talked about in previous episodes how motor skills, you can tap into those quickly again. Yeah. So her ability to play soccer, her ability to develop like that IQ, you don't lose that, right? You don't lose your sports IQ. You can build it, but what you do lose is you lose your attributes.
Yeah.
So you would have to build up baseline GPP, general physical preparation, and then you go into SPP, which is specific physical preparation. So the needs of a soccer player are going to be very specific. Therefore, now we start adding in things like more soccer specific, change of direction, the conditioning. So everything can be trained generally: strength, speed, power, agility, all those things, mobility. But once you build up baselines, you have to specify all those. So now you have specificity of strength, specificity of power, speed, agility, all those things. So you go from a general approach to a specific approach. So from general to specific.
So how does that percentage look then? So starting off, is it like a 90-10, 90% general, 10% a little bit specific to start getting you into the soccer mindset? Or is it kind of a bit more evenly split and then later on it becomes even more specific within training on someone? Again, it probably depends on the person, right? But what's the kind of the general gist
there you
on
go.
that?
That's the answer. It depends. I don't know. Yeah. I have no idea. So generally, like, I like to go over like strategies, but the specifics are always going to vary person to person. That's why the answer to most questions is always going to be, it depends, right? Not always the answer we want to hear, but most questions require me asking more questions in return, you know, and that's something I get often with athletes and parents. They'll ask me a question, and I know you've done this, and a lot of people, I've done it. We're all guilty. We ask a question like as a matter of fact, like it has a quick answer.
Yeah.
The amount of times I've had parents ask me quote unquote easy questions like, "Hey coach, a quick question, like what do I do to get my son faster?"
Yeah.
And they're asking it as a matter of fact. And like, I'm going to just be like, "Oh, let me give you this quick 5-second answer." I'm like, train speed.
The amount of times Henry has given me the rock eyebrow raise.
Yeah. It's funny
do you
because
have 3 hours.
yeah, I'm like, okay, because most people don't realize, and this is important, as a Q&A session, is that when a lot of the questions that I get from parents, they're going to always lead to me asking way more questions than they ask me. So they'll ask me one question, like, how do I get my kids faster?
Yeah.
I'm like, how old's your kid? What sport does he play? How long has he been training? Does he do speed training?
Yeah.
So the question will always, unfortunately, lead to more questions before I can say, okay, let's start here.
Yeah.
And then I try to I have to reverse engineer it. Right. So in the realm of sports, there are no quick answers. So a funny thing that I see often, and I understand clickbait, for example.
Yeah.
You have somebody that will post a video. I know many people on Instagram that would be like, top 3 things to unlock speed. And I'm just like, and it's the clickbait, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of these questions that get presented are because we're such a fast-paced society, and we see everything as fast. So therefore the answer must be quick.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Coach Henry, I just got a quick question. Like, how do I get my son, how do I get him to catch the ball better? How do I get stronger?
We figure out exactly what's causing him to not catch the ball, right?
I'm like,
and then go from there.
Like, what's your son play? Catching a football, catching a baseball,
even more specific too.
Yeah. So it's but that's my main thing is most questions will always lead to not an answer. It will lead to more questions. And then eventually we got to circle back around and be like, okay, here's the answer. Now that we know exactly who we're working with, this is how we get faster. So
I feel like that can totally take us to another area. I'll take us there. Social media play within anything, right? Within weightlifting, within sports and stuff. You having grown up in an area where social media wasn't a huge thing as a trainer, right? And the influence on it was more person to person than it was over the internet. How have you seen social media affect this line of work, or just this area in general, within the populace, within trainers over time? What are the positives and what are the negatives?
Ooh. Let me give you the 10-second answer, right? I'm like, that's such a deep one.
So many years of different changes. So
we're going to make this about athletic development, of course.
Yeah.
Because if we talk about the pros and cons in general of social media, then we'll be here all day.
Yeah.
And we might deviate a little bit. So let's talk about it relative to sports. I'm actually going to start with coaching. Before 2010, so early part of my career, before social media, Instagram, and Facebook and all this was a popular thing, in order to develop as a coach, if I wanted to learn a new skill set, I had to know someone that knew somebody. So I'll give you an example. I remember when I first got into the training space, one of my uncles, he's a strength and conditioning coach up in Sacramento. He's also a PE teacher.
Okay.
And he's actually the one who influenced me to even want to do what I'm doing today. Different story, maybe for a different time. And he would say, hey, you want to go learn speed? Go look into this guy, go look into this guy. Because he was colleagues with some of these people that I learned from. And because back then, you couldn't just click on somebody and view their videos, right?
Yeah.
You had to know someone who knew someone, and I did. So I got a little lucky. So then I would look into resources that these guys are underground. this is before these names became big, right?
Yeah.
And they were selling DVDs. Do you know what that is? Okay. Just want to make sure.
VHS
I don't
tapes.
know.
I still had
I
VHS
don't know.
tapes. I was like borderline. We had VHS
Yeah.
and then DVD, so I still had a little bit.
But all joking aside, they would have like pamphlets and DVD like lectures.
Yeah.
Right. And I would have to fly out all the time. So early on in my career, I was flying a lot to go get this information.
Yeah.
I was shadowing. So I would go to other experts in the field and I would do a lot of shadowing. So the way I would learn as a coach, I would have to shadow. I would have to know someone that knew someone. I would have to fly out to go get this information.
Yeah.
Right. And the pro of that, I think it forced me to really understand fundamentals, right? Because today I feel like we have such easy access to information that it becomes like paralysis by analysis. We have information overload.
Yeah.
So the advantage that I think I had early on is it forced me to spend a lot of time on a topic. So like with strength, I learned a lot from colleagues on strength and how to periodize strength programs, how to build them, how to build short-term, long-term programs, micro cycling of like, there's so many different variations of strength, of speed that I was forced to spend a lot of time in. And because I spent a lot of time in certain disciplines, it allowed me to create my own case studies, right? So like I talked about, I would guinea pig myself. Well, this is all I know. Let me spend a lot of time doing this. And then I would feel like, oh, okay, well, these are the results I got. This is what I liked. This is what I didn't like.
Yeah.
And then maybe a year down the road, I would learn from this guy or learn from that guy. Right. So that's how it was early on for me as a coach. But from an athlete's point of view, I think it's the same.
Oh, yeah.
It's in the beginning, I think you would have athletes back then, like you take Michael Jordan and he was like Tim Grover. That's my guy. That's my trainer.
Yeah.
Tom Brady, Alex Guerrero. He would stick to that philosophy, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like because, excuse me, because there was less access to information, it wasn't as easy to access this information. There was more loyalty and people would stick with something for a longer period of time. So you would see the development of an athlete from, maybe the rookie season. I think Tom Brady started with Alex Guerrero in 2007 after he tore his ACL, and he stuck with him till 2022.
Yeah.
Right. Michael Jordan was with Tim Grover pretty much his whole career. And so was like Kobe Bryant and Dwayne Wade. So with social media, that's changed a lot of that. So I feel like social media has given everybody, coaches and athletes and parents, a false sense of intelligence. We've talked about the Dunning-Kruger effect, right?
Yeah.
Where if you read something, you have recency bias on that topic. So you have this false sense of confidence that I am an expert in this field because, I know exactly how to do speed training because I saw these speed videos and I saw these drills. And I'll have kids literally tell me like, I do all these drills. I've literally had kids in high schools, not the ones I work with, but when I used to work at the high school, kids that actually knew more about strength than me. You hear the sarcasm in there, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, oh yeah, I already know what to do. I remember one time I had a 15-year-old literally like, I already know what to do. We're going over a power clean, a very complex movement. And I didn't realize I made a huge mistake and I didn't know that he knew everything. So I was like, well, where did you learn? And he goes, well, my friend's power clean. I was like, okay. He's like, yeah. And I was like YouTube. He had a poor attitude. I think he was like a freshman or sophomore. And
it was actually me, guys.
It was actually David, you guys. It was actually him. But I feel that social media creates this false sense of confidence.
Yeah.
And when in reality, all the information that gets put out on social media, it's just, it's appetizers, right? And there's no context behind the information that you see. So that's my take on coaching and, being an athlete from pre-social media to post. My favorite part, the con is the pro as well, because now I don't have to fly out across the world to go learn this information. Right.
Yeah.
So I do like that, but I think we need to develop better filters and know, so that way we don't get overwhelmed with the information.
I feel like the biggest issue we're starting to run into now is credibility, the ability to know whether someone's credible or not. Because I mean, you even see it within our athletes in the professional level now. They're not trusting their staff over there within their programs, because they know that they're getting hurt from it. But even on social media, just because someone has X amount of followers doesn't make them a credible source either. But that's how we view it. A lot of people is they see, oh, well, this guy has 600,000 followers, so he's got to know what he's talking about. He's got to know all these things. But I'm not saying that this is for sure true, but if there could be someone out there, I could talk to him and go, oh, he hasn't done anything to learn about the body. He hasn't done anything. Quite literally, everything he's grabbed is just stuff he saw other people talk about on YouTube who also weren't credible. And how have you also seen within athletes, how does that affect their mindset and their ability to perform, seeing now their competition in a bigger form too? I feel like with parents, it's probably not as big of a deal within the younger generation, because they're not on their phones as much, but they still have that sense of like, oh, this person has like a really great body. I can't get there myself, and they might get into their head. But now with the athletes themselves, have you personally seen that affect the new generation with the sense of, oh, I get to see Shaquille O'Neal's son now playing, he's my age, and now it's like, oh, dude, I don't even know if I can really play this sport anymore. Have you seen that affect any of your athletes who've ever trained?
Rephrase that question for me, because
Okay.
I'm listening.
Yeah.
So
I kind of made a statement, but then I kind of transitioned. So for athletes nowadays, have you seen a mental confidence issue within them because they can now see the competition that's actually out there in the world? Like NBA kids and stuff.
So I've definitely seen a lot of kids be affected by social media, because social media creates athlete identity issues, right? So, for example, back then when we trained as athletes, as when I was in high school and my generation, I saw your skill set when I played against you, right?
Yeah.
But in practice, I didn't give a crap what you were doing. I'm training hard, and the mindset was, oh wow, is he doing more than me? Is my competition? So I was always striving to be my best, right? Not just me, meaning my generation.
Yeah.
We worked very hard. We didn't really care what you were doing. Yeah. All we cared about was what we were doing, right? Am I doing my strength training? Am I conditioned enough? Is my skill polished?
Yeah.
And there was this sense of like this competitive spirit, right? I didn't care about what you were doing. I only cared about what I'm doing. I feel like today with social media, athletes are like the opposite. It's like they care more. They know more about other people than their own program. They're like, oh man, so-and-so is like doing this. I saw he's doing hitting lessons with this guy. Oh, he's on this travel ball team. Yeah. He's doing this. It's like, and then I asked these same athletes about themselves, and they seem like less confident. It's like they know more about their competition than they know about themselves.
Yeah.
And I feel that social media has created this stigma, this identity issue, right? Where you have to be a certain thing, look a certain way. Everybody's peaking at different things, right?
Yeah.
And what we see on social media, that's not even a glimpse. That's not even a glimpse as to what those athletes are really doing.
Oh yeah.
So, for example, I follow a lot of people in the space, and I'm not talking about just athletics, just fitness in general. So I still follow a lot of like strongmen. I still follow a lot of pro athletes, and I'm obsessed with fitness and athletics as a whole. So I follow a little bit of everybody. I
feel like you kind of have to, because every single thing in this environment has something good somewhere.
Correct. And one of the things that cracks me up is I will see somebody prescribing, whether it be supplement, whether it be an exercise, that I'm like, dude, I know you don't do that. I know you don't do that, right?
Yeah.
So you're seeing this, it's a false narrative, right? You're like, oh, that's what LeBron James is doing. So I saw this new one. It was like this, I forget the name of the equipment. It was like an at-home equipment, and LeBron James is working out with it. And it's been on my news feed.
Like it's connected to the wall.
Yeah, it's connected to the wall. I forget what it's called. And LeBron James is like working so hard. He has a shirt off, and then afterwards he's like slam dunking a ball, and he's like 40 years old. And I'm like, dude, first of all, you never knew that piece of equipment existed probably until that company came to you and said, hey, we're going to pay you a lot of money if we can use you, right? So I don't think a lot of athletes or even parents understand the logistics of training, right? Or you'll see, we've talked about that, the ex-athlete who's a trainer now, and he's posting up phenomenal videos of him doing cuts and jukes and 10-foot box jumps.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, once again, it comes down to developing a filter. And I don't think we have filters. So we always have recency bias, right? So where it gets confusing is we have too much information. We have access to too much information without a filter, meaning we don't know how to know what's BS and what's legit, right?
Yeah.
We don't know how to do that. And it just creates a lot of confusion. So these athletes become the victims. They are a victim of, oh man, I'm not good enough. Oh man, I'm not doing enough. Look at what he's doing. Like, who cares what they're doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
So
best 10-second answer. How do I want to ask this? How can we, or athletes themselves, start developing a filter to start seeing what is BS, what isn't BS? What are some tips you can give them to kind of understand what is and what isn't?
I can't even think.
Because you've been in
good
this
environment
game for a long time and you understand this environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 10-second answer is you're a byproduct of your inner circle.
Yeah.
So you need a good inner circle.
Yeah.
Simple as that. If you have a good inner circle, mom, dad, select coach here, select coach there, and you keep that circle tight and you keep it small, then when other outside resources try to pour in, you look to that inner circle to protect you. Because if you're an athlete and you're, that's under 18, you could be 9 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old. The final decision shouldn't be made by you, right? Yeah, obviously we want the athlete, hey, are you having fun? Is this helping? Like those type of questions are very important, right? Yeah. But the person, the security blanket should be that inner circle, the parent that you trust, mom and dad, right? Hopefully you have both parents, if not a mentor. You should always have somebody, a mentor, somebody that you trust that you can go to and say, hey, what do you think about this? Because I have that. Right now I have a few people in my phone, I can dial them up and be like, hey, what do you think about this guy? What do you think about this program?
Yeah.
And I find that a lot of parents don't have that inner circle. What they do instead is they go, oh man, I got to do what little Johnny, that little kid on the team, little Johnny, he's so fast. Let's go find out what he's doing. And then they're like jumping all over the place. Like, oh, he's doing this, he's doing that. And they just kind of do a little bit of everything. But what if what that guy is doing, let's say little Johnny's really fast and they go try to copy him. Well, maybe what little Johnny's doing was good for him, but your kid's not little Johnny. Your kid is different. So we need to figure out what the needs of your kid are, right? And then put them in the right direction. So I think to have a strong inner circle is very important. Mom, dad. I know I had a couple of coaches that I trust. When I was in high school, I would have coaches that I would go to when I had certain questions. And sometimes a lot of times it wasn't even about sports. It was just about like career. Hey coach, what do you think about this college? What do you think about this? What do you think if I did track and field in the off season? Hey coach, I'm struggling with this. And they would point me like, hey, go talk to this counselor, go do this. So if you have a good inner circle, they will protect you. And they want inner circle is also a circle of people that want to see you succeed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think the circle is the most important thing for long-term development and short-term development.
Okay. And that plays into social media too. So the things you come across social media, you're going back to your inner circle and then getting what you need from them.
Correct. I was just talking to a parent the other day. This is last week. I was talking to a parent. She's in her son is in my homeschool program. And I asked her, I was like, oh, how long have you been in homeschool? And she said, 2 years. And she goes, it was the best decision ever. She said it was a difficult decision because obviously if you're homeschooled, one of the parents are going to have to not work, right? So there goes one of your incomes. And that's a big adjustment. But she said it was worth it because now she's able to control and oversee and protect her kids. That's what she told me. She goes, they don't have electronics. They don't have a cell phone. Yeah. And her kid's a really good kid. Like he's very respectful. And it reminds me of her kid and a lot of the homeschool kids, for example, that I'm around, because a lot of these families are for similar reasons are homeschooling their kids, right? They want to have a bigger impact on their kids' development, as a human, with education, sports, all of that, right? So they all have similar answers, but she's able to protect her kid is what she told me. She goes, I can oversee this. I can figure out, I can customize their math curriculum. I can customize their learning. I can be more selective in who their friends are. Right. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, that's awesome. And, I'm not advocating for or against homeschooling or traditional schooling, but it was cool that she said that because I was like, yeah, those are some of the same reasons why we homeschool. And so from a sporting point of view, or, we're talking about sports, we're talking about Instagram, we're talking about all that stuff. It's our job to protect our kids. So if they're under a certain age, they probably don't need that. We never had it, right? Yeah. I don't think I ever had a social media until, I don't know, probably till I was like 18 or 19 or something like that. I think I had a Facebook. I had a MySpace back then. I don't know if you know what that is. But
that was slightly before me. Yeah, that one I was not there for.
Yeah, you weren't there. You weren't there for that one. So yeah, the inner circle. The inner circle is the short version, and you guys just heard my drawn out answer.
Yeah, no, I think that was actually a really good way to go, because even for myself, like when I got back home after the whole situation that happened in boot camp, the first thing I did was I deleted all social media, because I came to realize being away for it for so long, mentally I felt so much better, right? Which would sound counterintuitive because you just went through like the highest possible form of mental stress that you can experience within the States. I was like, but mentally I felt so much better being outside every day, having to do things, even though I was getting hounded the whole time. I was moving out and I didn't have the social media. There was no electronics, nothing. And I came back home, was like the first thing I did, get rid of all social media, limit my phone. And I didn't realize it has such a huge health benefactor to limiting it. But again, we are, I like to say the statement, if you haven't seen the Wall-E movie, it's the movie where they're sitting on these, they all got like, they're all overweight. They're all living life on easy mode. They have do everything for them. They got robots and stuff like that. And every day I kind of look at them like, dude, we're just getting closer and closer and closer to living a non-movable lifestyle, which is, if you've ever trained with either of us, the first thing we're telling you is, well, we have to move you for a healthy life. If you don't have great movement, you don't have great everything else.